Hey everybody, this is Alex Merced from alexmercedcoder.com. And what I'm going to do is talk about TypeScript backends, or basically doing using TypeScript in the backend. Yeah, let's just put it that way. And there's two main frameworks that exist for using TypeScript in the backend side. So on the front end, you could pretty much use any framework, and they all have like TypeScript bindings. Particularly, Angular always had TypeScript. Stencil.js was always built with TypeScript kind of ingrained in it. React has pretty solid TypeScript support. Vue has improving TypeScript support, and Svelte has improving TypeScript support. Um, and again, why does everyone want to use TypeScript? Because if you want to build applications and you're anticipating that this enterprise is going to become huge, you're going to have dozens of employees and it's going to be huge, or hundreds of employees, okay, you're going to want code that is manageable, meaning like you can catch errors because the code has types. So we can catch when someone creates a function that's passing the wrong types to a variable, or the wrong types to a function, or someone writes a function that's returning the wrong thing. Be able to catch those things and be able to do have other sort of catch points. One, also make the code easier to read because I can read the types, see what a function is returning, get the IDE hints because the IDE will be able to read the types and be able to suggest to other team members, okay, hey, you're using this function from another that was written by another team member. It needs these arguments. It's going to return this to you, and all that stuff makes it easier to work in a larger team, and among other things, again, also continuous development and continuous integration and having built-in tests and continuous deployment. All that also is part of the whole creating this sort of nice scalable system. But TypeScript is part of that. So I think Google has pretty much has put some support, financial support around, into Nest, because they believe like this is sort of the match they want. If you wanted to create like an old JavaScript backend front end, that they want you to do use Nest in the back end and then Angular JS in the or Angular in the front end. So let's play with it. And then the other big framework is Full TS, which is also TS based. And I'll be doing. I've done a separate video series on this. I'll do another one because it's been a while and I'm smarter and since I was back in those days. So hopefully I can explain it even better, knowing what I know now. So let's start taking a look at the documentation for NestJS. I should already have the CLI installed. Okay, so there's a CLI, and let's create a new project. So Nest new project name. Okay, so I'm gonna open up here, new terminal. We'll say Nest new. We'll call it project 1. Okay, and let's see here. Let me choose what package manager. I'm gonna use npm. And now it's installing. Okay, so while that installs, let's keep reading on the directions. Okay. Now we're going to open our browser. You can also manually create a new project from scratch by installing the core libraries with npm or yarn. In this course, okay, we're not going to do that. Okay, so let's move on. First steps. Okay, so we did that. We set up. And these are the files that are going to be in there. App controller.ts is just a basic controller. Module, this is like sort of the module meaning the application. And this is the entry file. So we'll take a look at this when it's done installing, and it looks like it is done installing. So let's cd into that folder, cd project 1. And then let's do an npm run start. Is that what it said to do? Npm run start, yep. Okay, and it looks like it's done, but it's not yet telling me like a port that it is running on. So I'm assuming the docs will tell me. Okay, guess it doesn't want to tell me yet. Collective. Okay. Well, I'll give that a minute. So here's our project. This is all our TypeScript config files and our package.json for our npm, and then the Nest CLI thing. Okay, actually I see here NestJS schematics. I think we're right in here, one of these files that actually you choose the port. Bring that down. Okay, well, anyways, let's go into source. That's generally always where we do our work. So again, the entry file is main.ts, so this is where the project starts. Okay, so there we go. It's port 3000. Okay, and so just to kind of see what's going on here, um, essentially this whole application starts by running this bootstrap function, which bootstraps your server. So it sets up all the server under the hood, does all the HTTP server stuff in Node. Okay, and basically what you're doing is they're creating an app object, which is using this Nest factory create and passing in this app module. The app module is coming from the app.module service, and this is where essentially it's collecting all the different parts of your application. So we're passing in all the controllers, all the providers, any other imports, everything that's going to be your application ends up in this thing, and then this gets passed. Oops, I didn't mean to do that. Okay, and then this gets passed and exported to main TS. Okay, so that's essentially like the architecture here. So every time we create a controller, then that controller then has to be registered in this app module so it's aware of it. Okay, so there's only one controller, so app.controller. Let's take a look at it. And again, this is TypeScript, so you're going to see a lot of decorators. Okay, so we denote that this class is a controller class, so inside of it are going to be routes by using the @controller decorator, which we're taking from the controller from the common library. Okay, and what we see here is that there's a get route, and the get route is runs a function, and the get decorator. And again, the way decorators work is that you put a decorator, and then you put something after it, and that's the thing it decorates. So really, what you're doing is you're passing the thing after it into a function called control. Okay, so we're passing this class app controller into this controller function. We're passing this get hello function into the get function, and what it does, it returns sort of a improved version of it. That's essentially the decorator pattern. You're passing a thing into a thing that returns sort of a version of it with more functionality. Cool. So then that's essentially this get function is going to take this function and turn it into a get route. Now notice we don't specify the URL anywhere, so let's try it out. Localhost 3000 hello world, and let's see here, does that match what this is supposed to do? So this is supposed to say get hello, this return.app service get hello. Now service is going to be some sort of, it's a class that does other things for you, so it's not a controller in itself, but it does things like fetch data from other APIs or do something. Okay, so the idea is you wrap, the pattern is that generally you wrap all the actual logic in services, you import the service into your controllers and run the functions via like this. So in this case, we imported the app service, which is this right here. Okay, and you're just importing it as a injectable, okay, because it's dependency injection. So that is, we can inject this thing into a class, and this is a class called app service with one function, which just returns hello world, which is what we saw. So get hello. So let's see here if I go back to app controller. Okay, and we can see that in the constructor we injected the app service. Okay, private read-only app service. Okay, and that injects it into the constructor. Okay. Cool. And then the constructor doesn't have to say anything because it just knows that it has this thing, and that injectable class is actually making it, when you specify it as an argument in the constructor, it's going to generate it for you, which is actually very similar, now that I think about it, very similar to how kind of the pattern in like Java Spring. Cool. So that's how that works. Okay, so essentially you just create your routes from there. Okay, now I'm going to open up another terminal. Okay, and I want to cd into our project 1 because I want to create other routes. Okay, and then we use the Nest CLI to create more routes. So let's go over here, or we can just use the controller we have so far now. So let me just go back to our nest.js documentation. Again, we went over the different files. That's all fine and good. you could actually connect a Express. By default, it connects an Express server underneath. So Nest is built on Express. Like most backend frameworks in Node, it's built on Express because Express kind of does what it does pretty well. There are some other sort of core ones that kind of build it up from scratch. Like I built a framework called Merver. There's Fastify, Polka. They all kind of serve the sort of core, but then most other frameworks are built on top of them, adding all of sort of the other fancy tools and being a little bit more opinionated. Okay, so we're good there. Let's go to controllers. Okay. So you can specify the endpoint there. I want to create a new controller. So here we go. Here's the command nestg for generate controller cats. Let's just do cats. Okay, nestg controller cats. Okay, so that creates the controller. So see, now there's a new controller. If I go right here, let's look for it. Oh, I see a folder called cats. And the folder with cats has the controller Typescript file. And we see the test file, which if you do testing, that's a different conversation for a different day. Now let me go to my module file. And we see the cats controller was already added, okay? So this is kind of very similar if you've ever added like, if you ever use Angular, this is kind of very similar patterns. You do the CLI, it registers the module. I guess I'm trying to see why Google likes Nest as sort of their companion to Angular, because the patterns are very similar, very dependency injection-y. Cool. So in that case, now we can just start building out our controller. So let's go back to cats. Okay, and again, see the endpoint is cats. And then we just go over here. We're not going to inject anything, so we can just start defining functions. So I want to create a get route at get. Let me just take a look at the way it was done in the other controller. Is it uppercase? Yeah, at get, and we get the export get. Okay. So then what I can do is I can just go import get post. You guys get the idea. Post, put, delete. Okay. So at get, and again that's a decorator, so we have to invoke it as a function. Okay, so in other languages you don't necessarily have to put the parentheses, but here you have to be explicit. You have to, it's a function, so you have to invoke it. Okay. You could technically, well, I'll make another video on how decorators work, and I think I already have 1 or 2 videos on how decorators work. But let's see here. Export class controller. And let's see here. So then we make another function. We'll just call it hey cats. Doesn't matter what you call the function. The idea is that whatever is after this get is going to be the function. So we define the function. And then we return what we want to return. I want to return JSON data. So I'm going to return an object. And it's going to say hello. Hey cats. Okay, save. So let's try this out. And I go to npm. I'm going to restart the server because I don't think it's like has hot reloading when you just do npm start. And actually on that note, let me take a look at the package.json and see if there is a dev server. Yes, there is. See, start dev. So let's use that. npm run start :dev. Okay, so that way anytime I make a change in the files, it'll re-update it. Perfect. So let's go back over here and do /cats. And there you go. Hello, 8 cats. Okay. So pretty straightforward. Like once you get the pattern, it's pretty straightforward. You just create a new controller and create it from there. Now I'm going to try something else. So I'm not 100% sure if this will work. But I wonder if I pass in another path here. So if I were just to do this, cats hello. Okay, does that mean I have to do cats hello? Okay, cool. Yeah, that worked. And does that mean now this cats doesn't return anything? Yep. Okay, cool. So that all makes perfect sense. Okay, so we know how to specify our routes, which is sort of the main thing. So then we would just go connect our database somewhere, which I'd assume we'd create a service. Okay. And you would probably create all your database functions in that service. So I imagine, let's see here. Let's go back to my other terminal and generate a service. So let's try nest g service db. Okay, a service has been generated. So now if I go back to my module, take a look at providers. So see, there's the db service. And I go in here, there's a folder for the db service. That's all set up. Okay, and I assume, I mean, I'm sure there's probably a preferred way of connecting the database, but I could theoretically connect it there. Let's see here. Database, fundamentals, techniques, database. What do they recommend? So equalize, npm install, save just type ORM. And then they, and you're gonna see this in full FOLAL2, that they use type ORM, because type ORM is, I think, the ORM that's furthest along with using TypeScript in how it works. So again, these are both TypeScript heavy frameworks, so they want to use type ORM to have that database. So let's see here, imports type ORM module. How about if you want to use Mongo? Okay, and I'm assuming there's going to be, yep, here you go, NestJS Mongoose. So I'm assuming you'd use that, and that would tell you the pattern to connect the database. Okay, and then here you would just, let me go back to here, and then here we'd probably just import like the model, and then you'd create all your functions. So you would create like db service, get, cats, or whatever. So that's pretty straightforward. It's nothing crazy. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that's particularly important to point out, but I mean that's the basic idea of creating an API here on Nest. Not too hard. Okay, again, it's very class based. So again, you have to make sure you're fairly comfortable with sort of JavaScript classes. But the cool thing is you can do typing things, and go from there. So that's a brief tutorial in NestJS. My name is Alex Merced from Alex Merced Coder. Right after this, I'll do a video on full TS. We'll kind of explore the basics there as well. And I'll see you guys there.